Hey guys, today we're going to get into Chapter 6 in your QuickBooks tutorial textbook. And now we're finally going to get into more sequence activities as far as QuickBooks and keeping track of our day in day out transactions. The last chapter we took a start to that, but it went through a lot of random things that didn't necessarily mesh well together, but they didn't include them in other chapters. Now in Chapter 6 we're going to finally get into stuff that has a specific order, a specific sequence to do. And we're going to do that by getting into purchasing activities. So we're going to be focused a lot in the vendor section here of the top part of our home page. So the first thing we're going to get into on page 6.5 here is to create a purchase order. And we're going to do that purchase order for inventory items. And we do that by clicking the purchase order button here in the upper left corner of our home page. So now this is saying, hey, we want to order this stuff. We want to buy this stuff from our vendor or our supplier. So we're going to buy it from Omni Incorporated. So I just start typing OM, and then you see Omni Incorporated comes up. You could also select the drop-down box and find them. And we're doing that as of a couple weeks ago. And purchase order number 5876. Then down on the bottom section here is where we just put in the items we want to buy. So once again, you could click the drop-down box, or I'm just going to start typing in 114 and then hit tab, and you can see the description of that item pops in. The price that I normally am charged for that fills in automatically, and then I'll just plug in the quantity, and you can see the quantity times the rate is multiplied for us here. Then 117, the lotion, we want 10 of those at $9 a piece. So our total purchase order number should be 513, and your screen should match the picture on the top of page 6. So once we're done, hit save and new and open up another blank purchase order. And you can see the purchase order number automatically flips to the next one in line. So now we're going to do another purchase order, but we're going to change some of the information. So we're going to buy something from American Linen Supply. But our shipping address is going to change. We're going to have it shipped to Cincinnati. So we'll come up here under the ship to box, and we can just type in the new address. So see, it puts in the default information for us to save time, but we're not tied to it. We can change it when necessary. And our rates for our items are going to change. So the queen sheet set, we're only going to pay $19.50 a piece. And then the comforters, we're going to pay $31 a piece. So once again, we can just change that default rate that plugs in here and switch it to the one that we want. Then once we're done, hit save and close. And we go back to our home page. So if you look at our home page here, it looks like a flowchart that we've seen before, right? From the practice set, just maybe a little less confusing. So you see there's a sequence to activities. First step, create the purchase order. Second step, receive the inventory. So that's going to take us up to page 8 in receiving the inventory that we purchased. So if I hit the receive inventory button there, see I've got two options, receive inventory with and without bill. If you are given an invoice number, that means you've been charged for it. So you would always do receive inventory with bill as long as there's an invoice number. So now we'll type in Omni Incorporated that we created earlier. And once I hit tab, now this window is going to come up and say, you did a purchase order for them. Do you want to take that information from your purchase order? Why, yes, we do. And we'll just come here and put a checkbox next to the purchase order that we created just a couple minutes ago. So once we've done that, we'll hit OK. And you can see the items, the quantity, and the cost all transfers over from my purchase order. So I want to put in the date. The reference number is going to be the invoice number that we were given. And you can just put the number. You don't have to type invoice in front of it or invoice number. You just got to put the actual number, what it is. The credit terms we were offered, which automatically filled in at 210 net 30. When we got to pay by to take advantage of the discount. And then if we did have any other notes to make, we could put that down in the memo. But the total amount would be $513. We're not changing any of the prices from what we did in the first part. And this should match your screenshot on the top of page 9. So once we're done, hit Save New, and that'll open up a new blank bill. You see, in the last one, we received everything that we ordered. But what if we don't necessarily get everything that we ordered? Well, let's take a look at the bottom of page 9 and top of page 10. We're going to buy or get our stuff from American Linen. So once again, we'll select, do we want to receive against the purchase order? Yep. We'll put a checkbox next to that purchase order, and we'll hit OK. Change the date. Once again, put in the invoice number. But we only received 30 of the queen sheets, so we'll come down here under quantity and we'll type in 30. And we only received 8 of the comforters, so we didn't get everything that we put on the purchase order. So we can just adjust the quantity for what we actually received. And our prices are going to be a little different as well. So the queen sheets we're only going to pay $18 a piece. The comforters we're only going to pay $28 a piece. So we can just make that adjustment down into the cost section as well. So now the total amount of our invoice, $764, should match the amount due there. And once again, you've got the screenshot on the bottom of page 10. So once we're done, hit Save and Close, and we've completed that transaction. So on page 12, what if we bought some inventory and we didn't take the effort to create a purchase order? We skipped the step, or we filled it out, but we didn't enter it into QuickBooks. Maybe we did it by hand, maybe we called it in over the phone. Who knows? So if we don't create a purchase order, we can just go to Enter Bills, and we can type in the stuff that we bought. So once again, it's American Linen. We don't want to go against the purchase order, so we'll hit No. We'll type in the date and the number. And now we've got 2 tabs down here on the Enter Bills window. We've got an Expenses tab and we've got an Items tab. So we want to be under the Items tab when we're doing anything with inventory. And we'll just type in the items that we purchased from them. So 50 of item 103. 15 of 107. And 25 of 112. And once again, the amount due up here automatically updating based on what we type in the bottom. The amount due needs to match the items tab here. If those don't match, QuickBooks wouldn't allow us to save the transaction. And that should match your screenshot on page 13. So we can go in and just do it without having done the purchase order first. We just, at some point in time, got to take the effort to type in the items, whether if it's in the purchase order or in the bill. So once we're done, hit save and close. There's some more instructions there for looking back at stuff. Okay, so far in the chapter, all we've talked about was inventory. We've purchased the product that we're going to sell to the final end consumer. But what if we're buying non-inventory things? So that takes us to the bottom of page 14. So once again, we don't have a purchase order. We're not paying for it. We just want to enter a bill. So once again, I'll click Enter Bills. I'll type in who I'm buying it from. I'll type in the invoice number. And then, like I mentioned a little bit ago, well, looks like we get a change in our credit terms. We've got two tabs, an Items tab and Expenses tab. So if we're dealing with non-inventory things, we'll go to the Expenses tab. And it looks like we're going to have a debit to fixed assets. We'll just type in the amount and then the memo, what we bought. And then we paid for some office supplies, or we will pay for some office supplies. So anything that's not inventory, go to the Expense tab. So whatever we're entering down here, like I mentioned before, that's going to be our debit. So this transaction is really a debit to fixed assets, a debit to office supplies, and a credit to accounts payable. So every time we're entering a bill, that's that credit to accounts payable to show that we owe that money to the vendor. And you would have made that in your purchases journal previously in the practice set. So as we're going through here, I'm going to mention things and their effect on the accounting equation, their effect on their journal entry, to tie it into the stuff that we've learned in the previous semester. So you can see what's happening accounting-wise, as we have these easier methods for entering in our information in our accounting transactions. Going back to that inventory stuff, it'd be a debit to inventory, credit to accounts payable for those inventory purchases. So once we have our bill figured out and it matches our screenshot on the top of page 15, we can hit Save and New. And that terms was just a one-time thing. Okay, but still in that transaction, we were buying stuff. But what if we've got just our other day in, day out bills that we have? So on the bottom of page 15 and top of page 16, what if we got our electric bill in the mail? So once again, we put in the vendor, Ohio Power and Light, the date, the invoice number, and now the amount due is $482.71. And once again, we're going to come down under the Expenses tab, and this is going to be Utilities expense. The memo, we just put in what are we paying for. Just so we got an idea later, somebody else comes in and takes a look at this. They know why we're accounting for things in a certain way. So now this would be a debit to utilities expense, a credit to accounts payable for this transaction. So once again, what we're putting down here on the bottom is the debit part of it, and our credit is the payable to show that we owe it. And we got to pay this bill at some point. Once we're done, we'll hit Save and Close. Go back to our home page. So we're following the sequence. purchase order, receive inventory, enter bills. The last step in the process would be to pay the bills. So on the bottom of 17, we'll look at paying an entire invoice. So to pay the bill, we'll click on Pay Bills on our home page. And you can see there's all the bills that we've just entered within the last few pages. And we're going to pay American Linen Supply on the invoice 2663. So I'm going to find that American Linen Supply invoice, the second one down here. I'm going to check in the checkbox to say that that's what I want to pay. We get a discount if we pay by the 27th. And it looks like we're paying that on the 24th. So we get to take advantage of that discount. So we're going to click Set Discount. And sometimes it'll automatically put it in there for us. This time it did not, so we'll just have to type in the discount. We just have to do the math, 2% times the 764, and we use the account purchase discounts, and you see that automatically popped in for us. Now it automatically popped in for us because it was the last one that we used, so you won't necessarily automatically use the last discount account for this. So you got to make sure when you're taking a discount, you use that account purchase discounts. We'll click Done. You see it factored in the discount and automatically changed the amount that we're going to pay. Down in the bottom left corner here, we're going to set the date. We want that we're paying by check. We've selected assigned check number. We've got enough in our bank account to pay this. So once we've got all that entered in, we'll click Pay Bills. And now this is where it comes up to enter in the check number. We'll enter in check 513. If we've already used that check number, we made a mistake, it'll come up and say that, hey, you got a duplicate, you've already used that number. So once we hit OK, look at that, you have successfully paid our first bill. And you can see all the screenshots on pages 18 and 19 that go through what we just looked at. So I'm going to go back to Pay More Bills, because on page 20, what if we don't pay the entire bill? Well, now we're going to come down here to Omni Incorporated. I'm going to click on them. And if I don't want to see it automatically filled in the entire bill under amount to pay, but for some reason or another, we're only paying $300. So I'm going to come here and click Amount to Pay, type in $300, come down here on the date, put in the 20th, so for some reason we're going back in time again from our previous transaction. We've got assigned check number selected, so we'll click Pay Bills, we'll type in number 514, and OK. We just paid another bill. I'm going to click Done. If you want to look back to your check after you've paid a bill, so either you think you've made a mistake and you want to edit that mistake, or you want to delete it and try again, I'll show you how to do that as well. So if you click on Write Checks, this is just going to open up a check that you want to pay something without going through the Enter Bills window, and we'll get to how to do that in a second. What I'm going to show you here is how to find your last checks. We just click the back button, this left pointing arrow. And you can see there we went back to 513 and 514. And you can cycle through your checks and see the ones that you've written, like I said, if you've made a mistake. So we bought something, there is no purchase order, and we're going to pay for it right away. So if we're going to pay for it right away, there's no sense in putting it under enter bills and then pay bills because we're taking two steps. What if we wanted to just do it in one step? Well, that's where we just were in the write checks window. So go back to write checks under banking here. So this is how we just pay a bill that we don't want to enter into QuickBooks. And you can see my checks have automatically defaulted to the next number in line, 515. So on the top of page 24, we're going to buy some stuff from American Linen Supply again. February 27th, so I'll type in American Linen and it'll say you have purchase orders. Do you want to use those? Nope. Hey, you've got bills to them. Are you sure about that? Well, we didn't write the problem, so we're just going to continue going. And once again, just like the Enter Bills window, you can see there's two tabs. We've got an Expenses tab and an Items tab. So if we're buying stuff from American Linen, we're going to use the Items tab. And I'll just type in the items that I want to buy, or that I'm paying for, I should say. We'll type in the quantity, and it looks like the rate's going to stay the same. So we'll type in 106 and 111. We're going to buy 30 of each of them for a total of $20.62.50. So you see, once again, the amount of my check needs to match that tab. If it does not do so, QuickBooks is not going to let us save the transaction. So once we're all done with that, we'll hit Save and New, and that'll open up the next check in line. So there we bought inventory without a purchase order or a bill. The next one's going to look at buying or paying for services, your regular day in, day out bills of your business. Now to go back to our journal entry conversation, this last check here, our journal entry would be a debit to inventory and a credit to cash. So cash is an asset account. It gets smaller with credits. So every time we write a check, your credit's going to go to cash. Your cash account is getting smaller when we pay it out. The debit is going to vary whether you're paying a bill, so it'd be a debit to accounts payable, or in this case, we're paying for inventory that we receive, so it'd be a debit to the inventory account. But let's go back to a new one and say we're paying for an expense account. Well, on 627, we're going to pay Hawkins Web Design. Looks like we don't have them, so we'll just use the Quick Add feature to create them. Call them a vendor. So anytime you get a new vendor, maybe in your homework problems on a test, if I throw at you somebody that's not in QuickBooks, you just create them. You guys have the power. It's not a problem. Just make them up. We can do that. So we are on February 28th, and we're going to pay them $875. So since we're not buying inventory, we're going to use this Expenses tab. So we're going to come down under Expenses, and we're going to use the account Professional Fees. And then the memo, we'll put what we're paying for. So in the check, in the memo, we'll put in web page design. And then we want to be able to track what invoice we're paying. So I'm going to put in invoice 115890. They just typed in the number in the textbook. Same difference either way. And then we'd also want to write on the actual invoice that we paid it, include the invoice in with this check that we send to the customer. Now, just like our last transaction, if we're writing out a check, it's going to be a credit to cash. Now, in this case, since we're using the Expenses tab, our debit is to the expense that we're using. So this one was Professional Fees expense. That's our debit. Our debit is Professional Fees, credit cash. So when I ask you in the homework what journal entries are associated, I'm not trying to make you recreate the wheel, confuse you, or anything. Use what you put into the transaction. The information is already there. So in this case, we use professional fees. That's our debit. We wrote the check. That's our credit to our cash account. So once we're done paying that bill, we'll hit save and close. And we go back to our home page. And our last thing in the chapter is what if we need to return an item? So anybody that's ever purchased anything, more than likely you bought something that you have not liked and you wanted to take it back. Well, same thing in business. What if we buy a product that we didn't like? We got to return it. Now here's the tricky part. Please pay attention closely, because if there's one thing in this chapter that students normally struggle with more than not, it's going to be this return thing. So what we're going to do is click Enter Bills again. And under Enter Bills in the upper left corner, we've got these radio buttons for bill and for credit. If we're doing a return, we want to select the credit option. So we're going to type in American Linen Supply. We're going to type in the date. Under the reference number, we're going to put in the number that we're given. Now in the memo, we'll put in invoice that this was for. And then now under items, once again, just like we've seen before, we'll put in the items that we sent back. So when we purchase our inventory items, it's going to add to our inventory. Or if we will go under items and services, it's going to show up there. That number is going to increase from what we had before. Now as we're sending them back, when we put in the quantity here, this is going to decrease what inventory items are showing up. So we'll put in the items that we want, leave the default prices, and you see we're going to get a total credit of $11.50 against our account. So this would be a debit to accounts payable and a credit to inventory. Inventory is getting smaller. Like I said, we don't have it anymore. Accounts payable is also getting smaller. So accounts payable is a liability account, gets bigger with a credit, smaller with a debit. So we're not going to owe quite as much as we did before because we sent this stuff back. In the long run, we didn't buy it. So we're going to have to pay for it. So that is the end of Chapter 6. If you have any questions on any specific transactions, please be sure to let me know. And we'll greet you next time in our next recording, which will be in a couple weeks after we get past our exam, now over 3 through 6, and then we get spring break. So you got a little bit before you have to listen to me again. Have a good day, guys.